I deleted my intro. Fuck it, we're winging it. Hey, see for yourself. The action media oriented podcast starring me. I'm not a star, but I'm here. I'm Hard Corey. And joining me tonight is Brandon. We're going to be discussing the 2018 film Joker. Am I right about 2018?
I don't know about the date. Yeah, I do want to get into the second one a little bit too. I think the second one's relevant.
Okay, great. I haven't watched the second one. But
yeah, it's okay. We could just approach it broadly and like address like the themes and stuff and how it kind of completes what they started.
Yeah, absolutely. So this movie came out in a indeterminate year, but it was relatively recent. We'll go through the synopsis real fast. I had to look this up because I wasn't totally sure, but it takes place in the year 1981, right? In Gotham City, the first immersion-breaking detail. And I'm going to go into this because this is the thing that I really didn't like about this movie. I didn't feel like it was a superhero movie at all, or it had anything to do with superheroes or comic books. But the fact that they have to call it Gotham City when it's basically just New York in 1981 really threw me off every time they brought it up. Right. So.
Yeah. The interesting thing about it being set in 1981 is when I was doing some preliminaries on this, they did say that they wanted to make it feel like an older film. And I want to say it was like late 70s, maybe early 80s. But yeah, that's what they were actually going for.
Yeah, they do a good job of making it a kind of indeterminate time that was clearly pre-internet, pre-9/11, pre-cell phones, pre-debit cards. So, yeah, it kicks off by introducing our hero, Gamers Rise Up, Arthur Fleck. He is definitely not in the living his best life at the moment. He's working as a clown, right? And he's got a pretty serious issue. Did they specifically name what this supposed disorder is called, or is this completely made up?
No, they actually did not want to specify what disorders that he had. The only thing that they were certain on is that he was a narcissist, which fits really well with the other films that they were inspired by, right? Like Taxi Driver and
sure.
so on. So yeah, I think that's an underlying theme of a lot of these types of revenge fantasy movies. Of like some person is that the protagonist is pretty much always a narcissist.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's more than that, though. This dude is clearly got some kind of psychotic issues going on. The condition is basically it's like Tourette's. He begins laughing at moments that normal people wouldn't consider the appropriate time to laugh.
Yeah, right. Apparently that laugh thing is that's also based on a real condition, and I forget the name, but yeah, that's a real thing.
Okay, so great job being a clown, right? That's what you'd want to do, I suppose, if you're going to be laughing uncontrollably.
The funny thing about it too is that he's a clown, but he's not funny. Like none of his jokes land.
I mean,
that's a big running gag in both the films. Is that he's not funny?
No, not just that, but he wants to be a stand-up comic, which is Actually, there was the one joke in there that I fucking loved where he talks about when he was a kid, he would tell people that he wanted to be a comedian and they would laugh. And, well, who's laughing now? That was actually really clever, and I like that one. But anyway, he's working at apparently a clown guild. It's just a whole bunch of clowns that get rented out for different services, and he's working in front of a store that's closing down, holding a sign pointing out their sale when a gang of, rambunctious youths decide to steal his sign. He goes chasing after him, and they beat the shit out of him in an alley. So this is a good moment to start off with because it kind of illustrates right away that his life is one of drudgery and a sort of like hopeless pursuit of an unreachable dream that he's sort of convinced himself is worthwhile because he doesn't have anything else. But it's at that moment it's pretty evident that something snaps in him when he gets his ass kicked by these kids, right?
Yeah.
So he goes back to the Clown Guild, and I'm skipping over some stuff, but it introduces basically his living situation later. He lives with his mom. Her name is Pearl. Is that correct?
I think so.
I definitely have it in my notes. So if I find out that I'm wrong, I'll say so.
I mean, obviously the movie's legendary. We could gloss over the plot details, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's Penny. He lives with his mom, Penny, and she's
See, I forgot. It's been a minute since I've actually seen it. So
right. Well, they just introduced his mom. She's in bad shape. She's writing letters to apparently his estranged father, asking him for money because they live in the ghetto. And then it also shows that Arthur is obsessed with this talk show host named Murray Franklin, and he kind of fantasizes about like going on a Franklin show and doing his stand up and becoming a star, right?
Yeah, him and his mom would like watch the show like every time it aired. I think it was like nightly, right?
Yeah. And there's a weird thing right off the bat where it's kind of evident that she may not be all there either, because she doesn't really talk to Arthur like he has any kind of problems or difficulties, right? She treats him like a child, like an overbearing mother, but it's, she doesn't really address anything. He's also going to therapy. We see he's speaking to a therapist, and he's taking some kind of medication for psychotic delusions, evidently, right?
Yeah.
His therapy ends because I guess they cut funding, and this ties into the introduction of a Mr. Wayne who's running for city mayor. Is that right? I believe he's running for mayor. Yeah, and that's Bruce Wayne's father, and it turns out that's the guy that Penny is her name, by the way, not Pearl. Arthur's mom is writing letters to this guy because she tells Arthur that's his estranged father. Yeah, so he goes to meet him, and he finds out that that's not at all true. His mom's just as crazy as he is, and she's invented the whole thing. He eventually finds her medical records and proves that it's true because he doesn't want to believe it. Finding out that she's lied to him, he just kills her in the hospital. He goes to the hospital where she's been laid up.
Smothers her, dude. Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty fucked up. And then Ed's in the meantime, he is apparently, it looks like anyway, he's dating his cute neighbor girl who's I don't know, looks like a single mom, but none of that's actually happening. Turns out that none of that's true. It's revealed that that's a delusion. That's kind of an interesting part in the movie that I thought was going to be more interesting, because that scene where he's sitting in her apartment as if, he's just waiting for her to get home because they're going to hang out, and she panics a little bit and tells him to get out of there. That was the one where it was like, oh fuck, like a lot of this stuff that happened was all his delusion. So like, did he really kill his mom? Like, did any of that clown shit really happen?
They wanted to have that ambiguity, but it's unfortunate it wasn't explored as much. I don't think it was so much delusion. I think I think what it was meant to represent was fantasy, like retreating into fantasies. Like his mom retreated in the fantasy of having this thing with Bruce Wayne, and he retreats in the fantasy of having this thing with the neighbor. And many other fantasies. So the idea of like, instead of like approaching reality and coping with it and dealing with it, not coping with it, but dealing with it, he decides to cope instead, and he retreats into these various fantasies. Unfortunately, that seems to be the only one that actually was, right. Like when he kills the guy in the subway, or the guys, that was not fantasy, and all the murder stuff, I don't think it was. So it's unfortunate, because that maybe in an American Psycho kind of way, it would have been more interesting if it was left up with a big question mark. However, there are other themes running through the plot where it wouldn't make sense to do that either. So they're kind of caught at a crossroads there, I think, as far as how to approach it, right, and get the general messages across.
Yeah, I guess they were kind of painted into a corner once they dedicated to him doing the whole girlfriend fantasy thing. But I totally glossed over that. He does get harassed by a bunch of bro dudes in the subway car, and he's carrying a gun that one of his clown buddies gave him.
Yeah,
because they found out that he got his ass whooped. He was in trouble at work after that, by the way, which his boss is an asshole. And but has clearly been losing patience with him and due to his problems for a minute there. So he gets a gun from one of the clowns. gets harassed on a subway while wearing his clown makeup and blows away these three dudes and becomes something of a renowned figure among these people that are these disenfranchised, lower income people that are all over Gotham City. Because this is interesting, right? That we just had the Luigi, what's his ass, kill that CEO of the healthcare corporation, right? Kind of the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So interesting. Gamers rise up.
It's literally a gamers rise up, like autistic stay of the rope thing, right?
It is.
We're all these resentful people, get behind, these murderers, right?
Yeah.
Who do extrajudicial justice and celebrate it, right? Meme about it and everything. And that was one of the things I thought was being addressed in the film is how the media doesn't help this, like kind of blowing these guys up and sensationalizing it, and then in turn, not necessarily, I guess it does radicalize people, right?
Yeah, it did, because and the interesting thing about this was that Arthur happened to be wearing his clown costume at the time of the murder.
Yeah.
So because his identity was hidden, he kind of becomes a figurehead that all these people can project their fantasies of
revenge.
It is vengeance. It's not justice, but
it's vengeance. It's vengeance. That's all it is.
Recourse for their whole lives of misfortune or just bad decisions or whatever it really is. They don't actually get into the plight of the people, but they kind of just show a heuristic of like, these are disenfranchised poor people, right?
Yeah. Honestly, on that note, one of the more interesting things about the Batman movie that came out with the Twilight guy, what's his name? Can't remember. The themes of that movie starts off with Batman being the embodiment of vengeance, and then slowly, once he confronts the Riddler, who actually starts enacting his own form of vengeance, comes to a realization that vengeance isn't appropriate and it's not the right course of action, and seeks instead to attack the powers, right, while also defending people. So it's kind of the reverse arc, if you will, of Joker.
Yeah. That it is that's definitely interesting, because the Joker has always been a foil to Batman, but that I never really thought about it like that. How they are kind of mirrored opposites there, where Bruce actually has sort of a justifiable, impetus for vengeance, whereas Arthur. It's nuanced, but he goes. I think it's fair to say he goes a little bit overboard with dealing with the way that he thought he was wrong. But anyway, there's a really funny scene where he's in a kid's cancer ward doing his clown bits, and he's getting all the kids to sing a song with him. He's playing on the radio, and he just jumping around, and the fucking gun falls out of his pants. And he gets that part made me laugh pretty good, but it's not played as a funny scene. You feel bad for him, definitely, but he gets fired for that, of course. And then two of his clown buddies from the clown guild, the dude who loaned him the gun, and then the midget dude, show up to his apartment because I think they hear about his mom dying. Is that what it is? Or maybe there's consoling him for getting fired. I don't remember exactly, but Arthur's pissed, and he's been off his meds for a time at this point. He mentions that was another thing that made me go like, well, he was taking meds to prevent his psychotic delusions. Now he says he's off his meds. So how long has he been off his meds? How much of this did he fantasize? It was one of those other confusing things. But anyway, he ends up.
To me that the meds are maybe just holding back his impulses. I think, if anything, I don't know if they were clearly not solving any of his fantasizing, right? Which is why I kind of drew the line there between delusion and fantasy. I don't think he was deluded. I think he was just. Yeah, because there was other scenes too where, like, I believe he was like watching Murray, and then it kind of and he's like there, and he's like fantasizing about being on stage and doing his routine and all that, right? So I think that kind of stuff kind of clues you into like where he's at mentally.
Sure. No, you're right. I keep saying delusions. The one of the other things that confused me was where he imagines going to bringing his girlfriend to one of his stand-up sets, and he bombs pretty bad, but that really happened because video of that gets played on Murray's show. It's just that the girl wasn't really there, right?
Right.
Okay, so yeah, it is really really weird mixing of his fantasies with his realities. So
yeah,
but yeah,
I mean
anyway,
that comes back to the Joker character too, because he's kind of an unreliable narrator. I mean, it was the same thing in the Nolan films, right? Like every time he told the story about the scars, it changed.
yeah, sure.
And
It's been a
it's
long
been a
time
thing
since I've
since the
seen
comics.
those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think even back in the comics, it's pretty much like determined that like his backstory is just total bullshit every time. Like no one really knows. I know they did the Killing Joke, which kind of goes into it, but I think even that's hinted to be like not necessarily canon per se, right? It's probably just
Sure.
another one of his random retellings of whatever.
Okay. Yeah, that all adds up then. So anyway, he ends up killing the dude who lent him the gun. And he lets the midget dude go because he didn't do anything wrong, which is that the detail of having his midget buddy show up and Arthur letting him go and saying, I don't know verbatim, but he says in essence, "You're the only one that was ever nice to me," right?
Yeah.
That definitely rang of reports of like mass shootings, particularly Columbine, or that there was that one grocery store shooting where one of the shooters will mention something to somebody and just let them go apparently at random. So I thought that
Yeah.
was a good detail because it made it was a real thing that really happens when people are just murdering randomly. They'll just decide that somebody doesn't need to die for no real reason, but they'll make one up. So it just kind of reflects the way that they're just making up reasons that they're killing people too. So yeah, he murders that guy, and that's kind of when he goes fully off the rails. But he like ironically right there is when he gets his big break and the opportunity to be on Murray's show because he's seen his stand-up clip of him bombing get played. It's like a Tosh 1.0 where they're all making fun of him.
Tosh 1.0, yeah.
Yeah, Tosh 1.0. I forgot what the fuck that was called. Where they're all making fun of him, and so they invite him onto the show, and he doesn't have the same fantasies anymore. I liked that scene a lot where he's in the dressing room, and Murray and his whoever it is, the producer, shows up to talk to him right before they go on, and the producer seems nervous, and Murray seems not nervous. He seems unsure, but more or less convinced that Arthur's going to do a fine job, despite how fucking weird he's being in the dressing room. He goes out onto the show and just flips his shit and tells people that he was the subway killer, and then he fucking blows Murray's brains out on air, which was kind of like a wow. It's 1981 New York. You can just walk into a movie studio with a handgun in your pants, I guess.
Right.
So he goes to jail. Well, not really. He's in the cop car as these crazy riots are happening. During the course of these riots, we get a clip of to be Mayor Wayne fleeing with his wife and son into an alley where they get stopped by some. I think it's just random thugs,
it's
right?
Random.
Just random dudes. But they happen to catch him, and he's a politician, so they see in him their the embodiment of their oppression, and so they blow mom and dad away, and there's little Bruce standing there. So that's the genesis of the Batman in that moment, which
totally
is
unneeded scene. Yeah,
I was gonna say it's another one of those where every time that they mentioned Gotham, I would be taken out of it. Otherwise, I was totally absorbed in the story. And then when that part happened, it hit me like a fucking ton of bricks. I was like, oh, duh, this is in the Batman universe. I'm not just watching, a believable story that could have actually happened in 1981 New York. Because that's what I kept thinking of it. That's what I kept thinking of it. That's what it represented to me. But no, once again, we're in Batman. So anyway, you're right. It was unneeded. Little Bruce appears. I think that's the second time that he sees him. He actually goes to the Wayne estate and makes Bruce a fucking balloon animal, or he lets him play with his magic wand. No, it's not a euphemism, but anyway, his cop car gets attacked gets slammed into, and he gets broken out of it, and they all celebrate him, as their hero. All these writers, they've got their guy on their side now, and they make a hero out of him, and that's completely validating to Arthur. Everything that everything that he's ever wanted came true. People are, he's surrounded by adoration, and people are cheering and lifting him up and everything. So he doesn't get away. The final scene, he's in a psych ward, right? And he's seen walking. He's walking down the hallway, leaving what looks like bloody footprints. Did I misinterpret that?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, there was nothing in the second film about him having done anything in Arkham Asylum, right? Because it has to be Arkham.
Yes,
No,
yeah, right.
they might have thrown something in there, but it was retconned or whatever in the sequel. So I mean, we may as well just say it meant nothing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, I wondered about that.
I mean,
It was,
yeah.
It could have been, for all I knew, like it to me, it implied that he just like murdered one of his doctors and was on his way to escape. But like you said, with the unreliable narrator thing, it could have been him just like imagining what it would be like to have killed his doc.
Yeah, I thought
So.
he might have just gotten his ass kicked in prison, to be honest with you.
Oh shit! He's walking out with the little bit of drainage from the anus right there.
It could have been, right? I mean, who knows?
Gnarly. I didn't think about that, but definitely possible. Huh. Yeah. So anyway, that concludes the plot synopsis. The stuff that really stood out to me negatively, of course, I'm not going to harp on it after this, but how it felt like too real a movie to put into the DC universe, right? It's just, it was so difficult for me every time it was brought up to think like, yeah, this is the same universe where Wonder Woman is real, because it just seemed too real. It didn't feel like it came out of a comic book at all, with the little references and the nods to stuff like mass shootings and protests and riots.
Yeah,
And
social unrest, mental health, family, domestic issues, and all that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, that stuff is in like DC. It's in Batman. Like, it's all there, right? I mean,
it
this is
is.
what makes Batman one of the. That's what makes Batman one of the more interesting and endearing and ultimately American. Probably the best superhero. Really, because it deals with all this stuff, So on one hand, yes, I see what you're saying, but I thought about this a little bit more, and yeah, it's unfortunately it's a comic book movie, but at the same time, like, you couldn't have picked a better like comic book universe to place this in.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. Yeah, it's
I mean, even if you compare it to something like the Nolan movies, right? Like, that's there too, but it just feels so on the nose of just being literally a superhero movie, with all the flashy gadgets and all this stuff, and even like the tone, like the visual tone of the movies, it doesn't really sell like the more grim atmosphere that Batman is really known for, right?
yeah.
This one definitely had a little bit of that in it, a little bit of that DNA, more so than the Nolan movies. Not as much as the most recent film, but yeah.
Yeah, it's because Batman's such like a legendary figure. He's an old school superhero, like the masked vigilante archetype, and of course he's buddies with Superman and the Flash and all these practically like demigods. So
Yeah.
to see this dude Arthur at this stage where his existence is like lower than humble. It's pathetic.
Pathetic.
Yeah, pathetic. To see him like that, it was so hard for me to draw an imaginary timeline between that and his position to the point where he's actually like a rival for the legendary Batman.
And that's the thing, right? Is your expectations is that this is going to go in a direction where he kind of just becomes this like nihilistic psycho, right? But that's not really what happens in the film. But you're kind of like expecting it, and those expectations, like, I hate saying, oh, they're subverted, right? Because it's obviously not the intent. It's just your fault as an audience member watching the movie and having these expectations. I suppose it could be our fault, although throwing it in the
definitely.
Batman universe, it's like, I don't know. It's difficult, right? Like you really have to just kind of approach it as its own thing and just kind of set that shit aside and go, okay, whatever happens, I'm here for the ride, right? Like
Yeah,
it's just
yeah.
obviously
Which
it's difficult. It's difficult to do. It really is. You know.
no, but it is on me watching it to be like, to just take it as it is,
Yeah.
and walk away with bloody footprints after the fact. So
I think I've just
yeah.
watched so much shitty movies on like Tubi that I've just conditioned myself to just take something as it is and just
I mean
and
that
just
that
endure through, you know.
yeah, that's the best way to do it. Now, I watched I think the first Nolan Batman, and then I never finished that trilogy, and so anything that came out after that, I don't know anything about, but I'm gonna have to get into them after this. Probably rewatch. I don't even remember what the first one is. It The Dark Knight
Batman
Rises,
Begins.
Batman
Batman Begins,
Begins.
yeah.
Yeah, there we go. So I'm gonna have to get back into that.
Yeah,
And do
that one isn't very good, man. Like honestly, I never liked it much. It's just the second and third ones that are good, but I don't think they're I'm just going to throw my hat in the ring here, dude. I don't think they're as good as the one with fucking Edward from Twilight. I think that's like the best Batman movie that's been made so far. And the whole thing takes place at fucking night, and it's like raining half the time. Like, dude, how much more Batman can you get, dude? He's all emo.
yeah, yeah.
Dude, he's all emo and mopey, and he's actually a fucking detective in the movie. Like, he actually goes and like investigates crime scenes and uses his gadgetry to like figure things out. I mean, that stuff is kind of in the Nolan movie. He takes things into the lab and works with Morgan Freeman to like figure things out. All whatever, and then talks to Gordon, but now this one he's like at the crime scenes and he's like recording shit and he like sends like Catwoman undercover. It's cool, man. Like
Okay, okay.
it actually, like I said, it's true to like what the old Batman comics were before, like the alliances with Superman and all that bullshit, the
Yeah.
Justice League. It's just straight up like rich detective guy, trying to clean up the streets, so to speak.
Okay. Yeah, that works a lot better for me because I'm gonna be real. I always felt like Batman was way in over his head when it came to the Justice League. I know that his whole thing is like, well, he's the smartest human alive and he can bench press 1,200 pounds, so he's right at the absolute peak, tip top apex of what a human is capable of. But it's like, come
Yeah, then
on, dude.
homie's got no powers.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's
So
smart and stuff, but
yeah.
fucking Superman can like analyze somebody's molecular structure with his bare eyes. It's like, come on.
I mean, dude's got laser vision, bro. Like what?
Yes, the Flash
Yeah,
can outrun
he could.
time.
Yeah, he could fly, and Batman's like, hold on, let me get
Yeah.
my jet.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there
Okay.
was that. There was even that, and they always do such a rough job of trying to make that like the Batman versus Superman movie is
Yeah, that's
just
just
like,
playing into the young adult market, and all
yeah,
that bullshit. I don't,
yeah.
I don't count that stuff, and I don't respect it. I'm not even a fan of superheroes, to be honest. Like I said, Batman's the only one that I ever thought was cool. I thought the rest were just like dumb.
Yeah, I always had a hard time with the movies. When it came to the comics, I never really followed them. I do really like Grant Morrison and Alan Moore, especially when they do Superman stuff, because their shit's so
Yeah,
psychedelic and far out, and they really get into the psychology of like what would it be like to be Superman? What kind of things would you actually have to struggle with? So that's cool, but it's none of that stuff's ever in the movies. So
yeah,
the Joker movie works much better if I just kind of like divorce those experiences and don't consider them really congruent in the same universe. So yeah, that's just a nitpick. Like I said, I'm done with it. But
hmm
tell me about what goes on in Folia 2, because like I said, I didn't get a chance to watch it. Um,
So basically, he's in Arkham, right? He's back on his meds again. Um, he comes in contact with Harley Quinn, right? Um, and she's an admirer of his, and she actually checked herself into the asylum to get close to him. So she was voluntarily there. In the background, the media has turned the whole thing into just a giant sensationalized story. He's super popular. There's still people like on the streets like wearing his shit. Um, and he has the pending court date, right, for the murder trial. And through hanging out with Harley and kind of falling in love, banging and all that stuff, he stops taking his meds, and there's more fantasy scenes, right, that go on between the two of them. So that, once again, unreliable narrator. You don't know how much of the musical, well, almost probably none of the musical scenes are real. Um, and they're probably both singing to each other, but there's a lot of instances where like he'll be in like a room and someone will ask him a question and he breaks out into a whole song and dance, right? And then it'll end and people are like, Arthur, are you gonna answer the fucking question?
Yeah, okay. Now, so
It's really funny.
how does he meet up with Harley, and what is it that
um
attracts her to him?
I guess, well, okay, I guess what attracted her to him was the sensationalized story, right, of him being the Joker. Like she was attracted to the hyped up media character of the Joker
Okay, so
and
she was
the
one of
image
his
that
fans.
yeah, she's basically a super fanboy of his, a
Okay, okay,
fangirl, right?
okay.
Um so she's another member of the fandom, if you will.
Yeah.
And yeah, so she's really obsessed with the image of the Joker, and that kind of inspires him to get back into his own image, right? Because he was kind of just a guy hanging out, and his defense attorney was trying to run a case, basically saying like, look, the Joker, he was is a split personality and all this stuff. And as they're going, things are happening here and there, and there's a breakout kind of scene where they start climbing the fence, and then they get caught and all this stuff, and they never make it out, and all that. And then during the trial, Harley kind of convinces him, after I think talking in like one of those phone booths, because she ends up leaving the asylum, and she says, I'll wait for you when you get out, right? She convinces him to represent himself in the case, and so he fires his fucking public defender.
Yeah, smart dude. There we
And
go. I'm gonna bring two things up real quick. There is precedent for that. I believe it was Charles Manson who tried to represent himself, and this is just a classic dumbass criminal thing, right? Where they think
yeah.
they think they're know-it-alls and they want to represent themselves on trial. Also, a thing that I was that crossed my mind earlier, and I forgot to bring it up, but the clown masks that become big time sellers, where everybody who thinks that the subway killings were great, they're all donning these goofy clown masks, which we
Hmm.
have precedent for with the Guy Fawkes masks, right?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, V for Vendetta, baby.
Yeah, that clicked for me for sure. Gamers rise up.
Yeah, which is, yeah, it's so funny though, like how all that stuff ties in, right? Like the anonymous 4chan image board culture, like getting behind another figure like this, man.
Yeah,
They got right behind the Joker after the first one.
yeah. And it's like you can. These people don't seem that stupid because of how much real life precedent we have for this kind of stuff. Where these guys, even like Dylan Roof and Dylan what's his ass, got kind of
Mhm.
like memed into infamy, or not even infamy, but memed so much that enough people pretended to act like they were heroes that you get some stupid kids that were actually idolizing them. Um, the name escapes me, but watched a documentary about this girl who was quote unquote radicalized on Discord. She was just an idiot who thought that the Columbine shooters were heroes, and she ended up going shooting up her own school and getting killed. But yeah, like that kind of thing. That kind of thing really does happen, where you have people who are not truly sincere about their idolization of these folks, but people who are
Mhm.
not able to tell otherwise really fully buy into it. So it didn't seem stupid to me that all these people were obsessed with buying these clown masks, even just for the meme factor. You know what I mean?
Oh no, not at all. And that's what I was saying about like the themes of the movie and like why like not everything could have been a fantasy, right? Because they really wanted to like talk about that, and it's more explicit in the second film. But they really wanted to show like the harmful like kind of cascading effects of that type of person, and what will happen when they're picked up by the media and turned into something more than they were.
Right, because they don't have
Um,
a clear sense of self anyway, and so their fantasies can be amplified when they see when they see themselves reflected as some kind of entity that they're not, but they just sort of conform to whatever they're perceived to be.
Yeah. Well, in a sense, yeah. I think. Do you want me to finish Folly Ado, or
Yeah,
we
go
could
ahead.
just
Yeah,
keep
yeah, yeah.
talking? Okay, so basically, like during the trial, I mean, I'm glossing over a lot, but it's kind of irrelevant, right? More for, I guess, your education. During the trial, he shows up in full Joker attire, and he starts when he starts running, doing the "Your Witness" thing. He puts on this like fucking foghorn leghorn ass accent. He's like, "Well, Your Honor, I do declare that you were there on whatever." And he does that for a bit, and then they even get the midget back on, and he has this scene with Arthur where Arthur's talking to him, and basically the midget guy was like, "You made me really scared. I've been scared for 2 years or however long it's been." Arthur, he's like telling him like how much it affected him. And after that scene, he kind of snaps out of it a little bit, and in a sense, he comes back the next day and he renounces the Joker like persona halfway through, and says that that he's not the Joker. He says that he did the murders, right, and then he's convicted. um he goes back into there somehow. I forget how he escapes. He ends up escaping, actually. Some of his fans pick him up, drive him through town. He ends up getting out of the car, running away, and he runs all the way back to his apartment, like that goes up the long ass staircase. And Harley's sitting there waiting for him, and she basically rejects him because he renounced the Joker persona, and she
Oh
tells him, it was
shit,
all just yeah, she's like, "Oh, it was all just a fantasy and all this stuff."
man.
And and so she leaves him, and then he gets arrested, taken back to Arkham, and then he gets shanked by another. I don't want to say inmate, right? Because it's an asylum, but another patient, and he's bleeding out and dies, and then the person who shanked him starts maniacally laughing, implying that that becomes the actual Joker or something. I
Oh,
think,
whoa,
but
what the fuck? Wow.
yeah,
What a twist. Okay,
yeah,
man.
yeah,
More real shit. The fickle, fickle nature of groupies. Am I right? But
yeah.
yeah, that's crazy. I definitely didn't see that coming. But wow, damn. So he just, geez. So this movie is basically his catastrophic downfall, showing basically the logical endpoint of his kind of behavior. There's
Exactly.
nothing glorious or justified about anything that he does.
Exactly. It's like it was all, yeah, exactly. It could only have ended this way, right? I think that's might have been what I was telling you too. And when I watched the film, I thought the same thing after it ended. I'm like, there was no other way this could have gone.
Yeah,
And unfortunately, a lot of people didn't like it because they wanted him to fully embrace the Joker persona, go full anarchist, nihilist, and just start like murking like people. But if you paid attention to even back in the first movie, like that was never going to happen with a person like this.
yeah.
It's just he's too pathetic of a character, um, and the narcissism that he has is going to forever prevent him from truly accomplishing anything in his life. Right? I mean, you go back to where it came from, right? The Greek. The Greek origins of it, right? I mean, the dude just sat there staring at a fucking pool all day, and he never did anything with his life.
Yeah.
And I think and it's interesting. What I thought was the parallels between that story and how Narcissus became that way. And they kind of tie that in the first Joker, right, with the way that his mom treats him, right? So there's the dynamic between that old story and then this new one. And in the Joker, right, his mom doesn't never really showed him any love or affection his entire life, right? Which he so desperately needed, which is why he wants the love and affection from everyone around him.
Yeah, right.
And in some sense, in I think in I haven't read the Echo and Narcissus in a long time. But from what I recall, his mother was the reason essentially why, like, she kept on trying to protect him, just in the same sense that Arthur has an overprotective mother. um, but she never really like mothered him. Like, she was never a mom to Narcissus.
Yeah,
So he
okay.
was kind of lacking. He really lacked that foundation that he needed. She just kind of gave him whatever the hell he wanted and just tried to protect him and keep him from harm. And that ended up turning him into what he became, just basically a pathetic loser who could only just kind of stare at himself. in a fucking pool.
Sure.
Um,
Okay.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
and I guess in that sense, you might interpret the Joker kind of persona as Arthur kind of staring into that same abyss, if you will, right? Because
Definitely.
it's somewhat of what he wants to be, but isn't, and it's the way that he's going to get recognition as that, as the Joker character. Um, but it was never to be, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's kind of like the Jungian shadow of like the mother archetype, right? Where the mother is supposed to nourish and facilitate growth, but as well as being protective. But the dark flip side of that is being overprotective and actually stifling any kind of progress or growth in the
Hmm.
child. So yeah, and um, yeah, and you that's kind of illustrated there with the mother just being content evidently to just ask for handout, ask for money, like try to
Hmm.
convince herself and everybody else that this dude owes her something. He's uh, Mr. Wayne,
Yeah.
will pay her, getting something that she has no right to ask for. Man, huh? Yeah, I didn't draw the parallel there with Narcissus, but so it's interesting though that it's implied that the dude who murders Arthur would go on to become the Joker, because at that point, if Arthur's actually like publicly and even internally rejected the persona
Hmm.
lives on, right? Like
Yeah.
mimetically, somebody else can step into that role and become the same person for all intents and purposes to everybody else, because that's
Yeah.
what he is, a figurehead to project onto. So
Yeah.
that's definitely
Again,
interesting.
anyone, we are, we are anonymous. We are Legion. It's exactly
Yeah,
that.
yeah, precisely. Wow, wow, man. Wow, I haven't.
I thought I don't know why everyone hated the second one, man. Like it was great. I mean, the music, a lot of the musical numbers could have been done better. Like there was a really good one where he's in the courtroom, he picks up a chair and starts bashing in the prosecution with the chair, goes up, takes the gavel and smashes the judge's head in. If
Hell
more of the
yeah.
scenes, if more of the scenes were like that, I think it would have been infinitely better. But unfortunately, a lot of them are like him and Harley singing together, kind of falling in love on this like fake stage in front of an audience kind of thing. And I just that shit just did not land with me because I don't know. She shoots him at one point, and then that's kind of brought up later. It's foreshadowing of the ending
Oh
in a
yeah,
way, and
sure.
like her, I guess, betrayal of him after he betrayed her, so to speak. But like I said, I just don't think a lot of those were as well executed, and they weren't as creative and clever as I thought they could have been, as exemplified by the courtroom musical number.
Okay. So yeah, so there's one small downer. I personally fucking hate musicals. I hate it when whenever a song happens in a movie, but I'll
Yeah,
I will go into it, ready to ready to leave bloody footprints, just take it as it is. But
I am not gonna lie. There were points where I definitely fast forward through a few of those just because I'm like, okay, let's move on now. Like it wasn't landing for me.
sure, I get you. So okay, so let's get into the why people didn't like these movies, because that's kind of what got me interested in watching the Joker in the first place, was the huge gap between opinion here. A lot of people were talking
Mhm.
about how amazing of a movie it was, and a lot of people evidently fucking hated it. And so I was like, what the fuck kind of movie is this that you know that spread people across such a vast divide? What do people hate
Um,
about it? I'm going to say that I understand anybody who is confused about the way that it fits into the DC universe, because that's how I felt. But I get that that's on me. And as you said, expectations. And because, comic books are so vast, there's so many different moods and tones that have occurred over the years with these different characters. It's so hard to try to think of them as like an individuated entity. So it works a lot better just to pick and choose the stuff that works for you. And, if something doesn't, fuck it. But so I get that part. But there were a lot of people that I did read some articles and opinion pieces by people who thought that this glorified the same kind of real life stuff that we talked about, like the people
Hmm.
that would that venerated school shooters or what have you,
Yeah.
like that. I didn't get that at all. How do you pull that interpretation from this movie? I don't know.
It might have just made them uncomfortable because it's tying too many of those things. And I'm kind of hesitant to put it this way, but I'm just going to go for it because I don't know a better way to say it. But it's kind of like the divide is between like the normies and gamers, right? That's the divide. If you fall on the gamer side, you're like, yeah, get them, right? And then if you're fall on the normie side, it's like, man, like this is way too close to home.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So
No,
I kind of think that
that's
your reaction is going to depend more because I mean, let's be honest. Like you know exactly who. Like everyone was memeing. Like, however many pills you swallowed, right? Black pill, red pill, all that stuff. If you took any of those, then you probably loved the Joker as a character, and then you would see yourself in the meme, in the image, right? And there were many
sure.
memes, right, shared around. I saw it. It's the same thing that they did with Patrick Bateman from American Psycho, right? Uh,
Yes.
another similar story, but even more unreliable because he probably didn't kill anyone at all. But he same thing, guy retreated into fantasy, right? To
Yeah,
cope.
yeah.
Um, and the gamer side, let's call it, just being charitable. They see themselves as Patrick Bateman, right? The ultimate Sigma, despite Patrick Bateman being a literal NPC.
Yeah.
And subconsciously, I think all these people know that they're kind of NPCs, all anonymously posting the exact same sound bites and memes, across the internet. So
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
it's a very nice irony there, right? Um, and I think that's why they love the first movie so much. And then the second movie kind of just shits all over that. But really, though, their love of the first movie has the same misunderstanding that their love of American Psycho. It's misunderstood by them as well. They don't really get what either one of those movies were about, in my opinion.
No,
Which,
I
like I
think
said, it's ironic. They loved it, but for the wrong fucking reasons.
yeah. No, I think that's I think you hit the nail on the head, definitely. Imagine I can't put myself in the position of coming at this movie as a fan of the Joker, thinking that he's a cool guy. Never quite got that like backing a villain mindset, I guess. It's becoming more and more popular, it feels like, as the years go by. But yeah, I could never put myself in that headspace where I'm just like,
Yeah, yeah.
Boba Fett is actually the best character in Star Wars, like that type of thing. It's like, no, I don't, these people just kind of suck. And
I mean,
that's
he's
that
cool,
was
bro. He's got the jetpack and he's got the grappling hook and the flamethrower. He's cool, dude. I mean, that
all
was
right.
it. That was it for
Look,
Boba.
Look, Boba Fett was my favorite character when I was a kid because of the badass T visor helmet and everything like that. But I'm just talking about like you when you look at this movie, Arthur is so pathetic, but you can't like him, right?
He's
It
completely unlikable.
yeah, it gives you a weird, gross feeling. The kind of
Yes.
yeah, it's a weird thing where you wish that things were better for him, but you could never imagine yourself like being there, actually knowing him and helping him. Does that make sense? It's
Yeah,
like
exactly.
it's just
You would see him on the street or something, and like you would never like offer him aid because I think you just kind of know people like that. Like even if you try to help them, they're just gonna sabotage it or fuck it up in some way, right? Like I mean, his clown buddies, they tried to help him, and he just messed it up royally.
yes, yeah. Even his boss, yeah, he was saying that he was giving him way too many chances and he was being way too patient with him. But
Yep.
that's definitely that was what really got me hooked into the movie was watching the details of the life in a person like this, where these, like you said, these are the kind of people that you do see on the street, and you do have a visceral reaction when, and it mostly boils down to you just wish it would go away. You don't feel real human sympathy in terms of like being able to connect with the person because of their mind state being so radically alien from everything that you understand to be normal. But you understand that they are victims in some way. So yeah, it's a it's a
Yeah,
confusing and messy
it's kind of.
feeling.
I think at best you can kind of pity them, but it's really hard to sympathize, right? Because you want I think our natural inclination is to want people to improve and get better and kind of overcome this stuff. You know, Arthur is very much like half of the fucking internet at this point, right? Like that's how people are, man. They're these kind of like narcissistic weirdos in a way, right? Who obviously need help. They needed mental help. They needed something, right? They're socially awkward. I don't want to make it sound like I'm coming down on people, right? Because it's messed up. Like you want the social and environmental conditions for people to be better than they are,
Yeah,
right? Like there's always
yeah,
that part. There's that side of it, which kind of outweighs, a lot of what you're able to accomplish as a person, right? I mean, if there's a concrete ceiling above your head, how the hell high can you go?
right.
Um, However, it doesn't justify lashing out either, right? And a lot of these people want to. I mean, you hear about it all the time. If you spend 10 minutes on the internet, you get all kinds of fantasies about lashing out, putting women in cages, all that shit, right?
Yeah.
Because they couldn't get a Groiper Hitler 1488 bullshit
Well,
Twitter account, right?
we don't need to go into our Discord DMs, but that is what you see
Well, I'm
because
just it's
you
important though, like it because it's important because like this movie is a criticism of that type of thing.
yes, but not a indictment necessarily, more
It's
of
not an
a
indictment, no.
just the exposition of it, right?
Yeah, kind of showing like the harmful effects of it, and like
Yeah.
what could happen
Yeah, because
and
there's
and how
there's
and how and how it can ripple out.
yes, because there's nobody in this movie that you can cheer for. You're basically
Exactly.
you're watching at best, or I suppose at worst, or I suppose I should say most reductively, like evil versus evil. You're watching people uh, heartlessly exploit those who can't know or do any better. But at the same time, the retaliation is so disproportionate that essentially everybody's a victim. And
Yeah, it's just like the strong dominating the weak, and the weak want to rise up, and then they do it in like the most bungled way possible,
yeah,
and it just makes things way worse.
yeah, it really draws out the darkest parts of both sides of this perceived conflict, right?
Yeah,
So yeah, I don't. I'm with you in that the divide of opinion that I perceived when it comes to the movies was based off of, like you said, like those are pretty much the most succinct stereotypes
yeah,
that we can with such a generalization as I'm making with this polarization between the two. But yeah, that
yeah. It's kind of
there's
like hated for the wrong reasons, and it's loved for the wrong reasons.
yeah,
It's really
exactly.
interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? That is that's remarkable, really. You don't get many movies like that, which is, like I said,
It's
what
quite a feat when you think
it,
about it, man.
it
It's impressive.
yeah, it really is. It really is, because it's almost as like the movie worked at a meta level by exposing
Hmm.
this divide just by generating reactions from these two groups that it portrayed, right?
Yeah,
So,
it's not
well,
unheard of for art to become misinterpreted, but with movies, they're released to such a massive audience, that it's inevitable that you get just giant populations of people who just don't get it, right?
yeah. Yeah, because you have other, like I like the Death Wish movies, knowing that they're stupid, but dude's family gets, his wife and daughter get raped and killed, and so he just goes out onto the street and starts shooting people who
Hmm.
sell, specifically, he's not just randomly gunning people down, but he seeks out the drug dealers and the criminals who broke into his home and killed his wife and daughter and just murders them in cold blood, and it's like that's that's satisfying because you're like, yeah, those guys deserved it. Like somebody got
Yeah,
wronged. He didn't do anything wrong. He was just a pure victim. And it's a very clear, um, very, very clear line between the moralities there. So it never gets into what goes through the mind of somebody who feels like they've been wronged, and then zooms out to the repercussions of what they decide to do when they take justice into their own hands. Joker was the first movie that did that with so much nuance that I've ever seen. So
yeah, it was. I mean, it might not have been. I'm not sure. I'd have to think on that. But yeah, that I've ever seen, that you've ever seen, absolutely. Um, the Murray scene originally, I think he was gonna blow his own brains out, which is why he brought the gun.
oh,
Because
interesting. Yes, that's right.
Yeah, remember
Yeah,
he said in the movie, he's like, as long, I forget the setup for it, but he's like, as long as my death can mean something, or something like that.
yeah, and
So
multiple
shooting, so
times he pulls out the gun and pretends to shoot himself in the head.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and a lot of people are like that, right? Like when they want to commit public suicide, right? They want their death to have a message.
Sure.
Very common thing for people to just publicly shoot them, and hero, and there's a manifesto or something, right? I mean, that's another thing too. A lot of these people have some kind of manifesto or note you want to leave behind, and really like dig in deep, right, to the audience, and let them know, like, you really hurt me, or something like that, or this shit's messed up, man. That's
Yeah,
why I
well,
did it.
it's
You
like
want to give some significance.
right, and it's like the only assured way of having people actually pay attention to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, Ted Kaczynski, right?
Yeah. You got to go big if you really want to get people to pay attention. So
It's ironic. All you had to do is wait, like, what, 5-10 years, and you could have just had a blog and put it up on the blog.
Exactly. Yeah.
He only had to wait for the Industrial Revolution to further revolutionize communication, and
right, man.
just a
Right.
little bit of time. And it's like, bro, you wouldn't have had to go to prison, dude. You wouldn't have had to kill anyone. Look at
Right.
you.
Turn the system
dude,
against itself.
Yeah, another perfect example. He's another fucking avatar for people to parade around as this anti-hero, smart guy who this knower who knows, and all this bullshit. And it's like,
absolutely. I'm sure that you and me both have talked to somebody online who used the Kaczynski sketch as an avatar.
oh, it's
If
yeah, 100%.
hopefully with some sense of humor about it, but
Unfortunately,
you never can tell, right?
you wish. Well, okay, so screw it, we're in this. Let's go. How he's celebrated, right? Is like this really smart guy and all this stuff, but it's like he was also pathetic. Like they're like, oh yeah, he was intelligent, whatever. Look at his, like, he wrote like a thesis or whatever, and all this stuff. But it's like, if you look at how he lived, dude, like, have you ever seen pictures of his cabin?
Oh yeah.
Dude, I can't find it, but I did find one particular snapshot that really just sold it for me. Yeah, it was a mess, but right on the floor of the couch, dude, there's this big ass pile of ashes. So this dude was just like laying on his couch and just fucking ashing onto his floor.
Yeah.
For years, it looked like. He
Yeah.
was nasty. But like that right there just kind of tells you like that what kind of person this is. Very
Absolutely.
very very Fleck like, like.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally checked out, and unwilling to do anything about it. You know what I mean?
Unwilling to do anything productive.
Yeah. Totally checked out. Not, and it's a different kind of checking out from the whatever, turn on, tune in, drop out type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's, oh God, it's like the. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. It's a weird sense that I got watching Arthur Fleck that I don't really have words for, but
Mm-hmm.
No, it's that same real grody. You said pity is the best way I think you can say it, because it is a mixture of disgust, but also a sort of like hopeless, like, well, can't do anything for them. They've only got
the only emotion that you could possibly express. It's like, it's a lost cause. You just know it.
Yeah, lost cause.
And it's like the most you could do is express some kind of pity, because I think it's maybe in some way a coping mechanism for us because we know there's nothing we can do, but we feel like we owe it to ourselves to just kind of feel something for them, and that's all we can conjure. I don't know. It's interesting to think about. I'll probably have to sit on it.
Yeah, I think that it is a very like probably even instinctually ingrained human response because
Yeah.
we are instinctually social. So yeah, we don't want to see somebody of our perceived in group, even to the even expanding that to the extent of all humans. We don't want to see somebody going through something like that or living so bad because
Hmm.
we have this ingrained idea that every one of us, the way that each individual lives ultimately affects the way that the whole group lives. So yeah, we want people to do better. We don't have automatically a thought like just eliminate these people because they're doing bad and things that we don't like, but we actually do want to see them improve. That's why hero stories are so significant to us, because we want to see somebody who is struggling and is clearly at some kind of disadvantage but overcomes it anyway. So we get stuff like
Hmm.
Slumdog Millionaire and what the fuck was that Will Smith movie where he's trying to sell CPAP machines or something, Pursuit of Happiness.
I don't know. I
These
never saw it. Yeah, I deal with like the only Will Smith movies I even remember like Independence Day and like Men in Black. So
Oh hell, I forgot he was even in Independence Day. But yeah, those kind of inspirational movies are so effective and will never go away because that's exactly what we desire to see is and
yeah.
and it also encourages us to do better whenever we see ourselves slacking in some way or another, knowing that it's not just improvement for ourselves, but it's also what the rest of society expects of us. So when you're cut off from that totally, there's man, you're fucking buoy with no anchor being tossed about on the stormy seas, and
Yeah.
it's a horrible thing to see. I like I said, never really seen a movie go that deep into it. It did remind me of Notes from the Underground. That was the only other thing that I've ever gone through that gave me the same sense of like almost hating a person because of how pathetic they were, but
Hmm.
also having a really hard time finding a way to truly hate them because I couldn't find anything to blame them for. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, like
yeah.
it's not his fault he had a shitty mother. It's not his fault they had no money. It's not his fault that, he's weak and got beat up and was taken advantage of, right? Like he was
Yeah,
just trying to like pull the sign and do his job, Like none of this is his fault per se,
yeah,
like
yeah,
the
yeah.
things that happened to him. And these formative experiences all sucked for him, right? Um
Right, because that
and
wasn't
he
even his
had
real
he did
mom. Penny
what's
adopted
that?
him.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and he never got the help from like true help from the government that he needed, right? Um, there was no like mental health, like there's no good mental health, right? Just stick you in an asylum or have you talk to someone for like half an hour, every so often, like once or twice a week, like that doesn't do shit, you know.
Yes.
So yeah, it's hard to completely despise the guy, but you just feel it in your bones that he's hateable, you know.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, the
Yeah.
interesting thing, I know I keep bringing up American Psycho, but I think it's relevant because it's the affluent side of the same coin, right? Have you seen it?
I watched like the last half of it.
Oh, okay.
So yeah.
So yeah, basically like he's rich, right? It's also set in the 80s. He's the son of the owner of this firm, so he gets the job without any effort. He went to all the one of the big schools, right? The Ivy League schools and stuff. And um, he kind of he'll monologue about his routine. He follows all the trends, right? All the trendy skincare routines, his hair, working out and all this stuff and all these
Yeah.
things that he's socially pressured to do.
Listen to
And
Huey Lewis.
yeah, and he hates it, right? He can't
Yeah.
stand it. And as the movie progresses, he starts saying like, "Oh, my mask of sanity is slipping," or whatever the hell, right? And he says like, you can touch my flesh and whatever, and he's like, "I'm simply not there," right? He doesn't feel like a real person. All the dialogue in the movie is like him like flipping out because someone's like business card is better than his, and he just like says, when he has conversations with people, he just says whatever is socially expedient. Like he's just repeating dogmas, right?
Sure.
Um, when he goes to kill people and doing the whole music reviews, I think he's literally just memorized and reciting critical reviews that he read in a magazine, and that's all he's doing. So that's not even his own opinions. Like he doesn't have his own principles, he doesn't have his own opinions, he doesn't have his own viewpoints. He is 100% like the NPC meme,
I was gonna
and
say,
like,
man, that's too real as well, because you'll
yeah.
see this shit all. I mean, we talk about video games and stuff, and you try to go out there on the internet and communicate with strangers, and you're gonna constantly hear stuff about like, well, DEI slop is to blame for all the, the end of the golden age of gaming. Like we
Oh
talked about
god,
that
yeah.
kind of shit, but it's the same thing. You hear,
Well, yeah, they're going off their dialogue wheel, right? That's all they
yeah,
have.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
literally
yeah,
all they have. And there's like so many slop tubers out there who their entire channel is nothing but dialogue wheels, dude. They have
yeah.
like 10, and there's like 10 lines on there. That's all they could do. It's pathetic. And there's the same type of people who are like, "Oh yeah, dude, Sigma, workout, family, Christianity, God," and it's like,
Right, right.
yeah, okay, sure. And then if you catch them in their streams, dude, like when they're playing a game, they just start talking about how like, "Oh, dude, I gotta go check with my mom, see if she made me dinner," or God, they're always like, "Oh, I'm addicted to porn," and all this
Yeah,
stuff, and they start going
absolutely.
off about like Fuda. They go off about like Fuda shit and like weird like fetishes, and
Oh hell
and
no.
then they let loose and like how like they actually are, and then you go back to the videos and it's like, "Oh dude, these woke DEI degenerate liberals," and it's like, well, wait a minute, bud, like you're literally like your life is worse than this.
Yeah.
These cucks, right? It's like, okay, dude, honestly, like I would take being a cuck over like what you've described your life is, man. But it's the same thing. They built, they're fucking Narcissus, bro, staring in that pool and looking at the image and not themselves. But the image of themselves that they've built up, and that's all they could see.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so and what is that pool but other people's perspective of you, right?
No,
So
I think it's not other people's perspective of you. It's your false perspective of yourself.
I see. Okay, okay. Well
Yeah,
then
it's the
what's
false
with
image
the
of yourself that you build up.
there's the theme though of these people, not just Arthur and what's his name in Americans,
Patrick Bateman.
Bateman. Yeah, not just these two, but like we also see, we're talking about right now, but like bread tubers and these kind of folks. Like, what is this need for validation? Like, why do they need so badly to project this image of how they see themselves and have it reiterated back to them by an audience?
Because they don't have accomplishments behind it that kind of self-validate that image, right?
Okay, okay,
So the only way to get it is from others. So if
sure.
you could loudly cry into the void of the abyss and shout at people and play the role, and the hope is that people will see you that way and not what's behind the avatar, the anime avatar, if you will, or the trad architecture avatar, or whatever it
Yeah,
is, right?
or Soul Air, or it's going to be a Warhammer 40K Space Marine.
The
So,
Warhammer shit, yeah, totally.
yeah. Well, so you read a little bit of interviews and stuff. Do you have any more background info on either of these movies
Uh,
before we call it a day?
I don't know. I kind of blended it in, to be honest.
Yeah, right on. I didn't know if you had
I
any.
mixed I mixed it in as we were talking. I don't have really anything else to add. Let me just check really quick.
Yeah, sure.
Um,
I haven't got anything else either. Like I said,
no, it was just like they wanted him to have an impact on TV, and
yeah.
ergo the scene, and then I think it was changed or something. Oh yeah, the line that I was trying to reach out was, "I hope my death makes more sense than my life." That was the line.
Oh, that's a good line though. Yeah.
It's genius.
It's good,
Really
really,
perfect.
yeah, really good at expressing the hopelessness, like we were talking about there.
Mm-hmm.
Where, yeah, they consider it, they're just so totally checked out
Yep.
from the social reality or what's the name for that? Like, consensual reality. That's what it is. The one
Yeah,
that
I'll
we
read
all
you a
share.
direct quote. I'll read you a direct quote from Joaquin Phoenix. Um, the question was, he was wondering where something was coming from the scripting process. And Joaquin says, "Yeah, I remember we talked that around. It's also that particular personality type. It's someone that is seeking recognition, and all of these personality types are suicidal, and yet they want their death to have or to mean something." He has this part in his journal where he says, "I hope my death makes more sense in my life." So we remember talking early on about the shooting, the TV sequence, in which somebody wants to take their own life, but they want the biggest audience possible because in some ways they feel like that will fulfill the feeling that they need, this need for recognition.
Yeah. I mean, you talked about that earlier. People always wanted to commit
Yeah, like I said,
suicide
I
in a big
believed in
flashy
it.
way.
So
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I got one more thing before we call it. Joaquin Phoenix himself. I don't know how we didn't bring this up, but what a fucking performance, man! I almost never watch a movie and reflect afterward on how good the portrayal was, but it
yeah.
made me think back to him as the Emperor and Gladiator, and the
He
little
was phenomenal there too. He really played that kind of spoiled son role, but that
totally.
really spoiled that like insecure. He was super insecure.
Yes, but he had like he was portraying almost the opposite kind of almost a similar kind of guy, but in a completely opposite position in life, right? But
Yeah.
he still pulled off perfectly. Also, the younger brother in Signs. Signs was really cool, and he did a
Oh
great
yeah.
job in that movie. Man, I hadn't thought about either of those in Lord knows how many years, decades probably. But yeah, and I didn't even recognize it was Phoenix when it kicked off because he was wearing the clown makeup and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Man, yeah, what a, what a really good job. I just wanted to point out how fucking awesome. I assume he does an equally good job in Foley to do so. I am going to watch that. Probably won't talk about it again, but we'll probably come back and reference this movie in future episodes, I'm sure, because this is a benchmark for nuanced commentary on shit that's too real to say aloud, but this got as close as possible with how many callbacks to real life situations that we've been through. But
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy to sit here and think about like what to talk about, right? Because like, I mean, we kind of jumped all over the place, and I know I did, and I'm not getting into like fringe internet culture here and stuff, right? And there's so much more to say, but you want to like kind of cut it off because like now we're getting away from the movie, but it's at the same time it's not really a digression, right? Like it's the substance of the film.
yeah, which is it did tie into a lot of these things. A lot of these things that had and you know what? That was part of it to me where there was too much real life stuff for me to think
Hmm.
of it as being in the Batman universe because I can't think
Yeah,
of Guy Fawkes masks and 4chan anons and Batman in Gotham City. It's just that's
yeah,
so fucking weird to have that interpolation between what's, very much like just the next step past fairy tales is what superheroes are and stuff that's so close to real life. It's those things are so far separate in my mind where one is clearly fantasy and one is just the everyday stuff that I deal with and use fantasy to just take my thoughts away from for a time. So when you mix them together, I think that might have lent a lot to the real uncomfortable, uncanny feeling
mm.
of watching all this stuff.
Yeah. But
Because
again, though, like I said earlier, like Batman is the comic hero for like blending stuff into real life, right? Like
yeah,
all of the villains are archetypes of like actual like real world issues and like types of like people, right? Like I mean, obviously, like Penguin's notoriously easy, right? It's a crony capitalist.
right,
Um,
right.
that's pretty simple. Then you like if you juxtapose it with Superman, right? Like it's not that interesting. Superman, it's always in a lot of I notice a lot of superheroes are like this. But I'll focus on Superman, right? There's always some villain who wants to change society. They say society is like corrupt in some way or it needs to be reformed. And then here comes Superman. I gotta defend the current order. Never questions it. Doesn't do anything. Just I gotta defeat them. But like Lex Luthor will go on and like about how he wants to be like an agent for change. And Superman just jumps right in. Nope, we're not changing today, bud. But he never actually sits down and questions whether or not the order that he's preserving is worth preserving. He never sits there and goes, "Well, man, like, is it creating all of these people? Should we do something about it?" Um, and he never does, of course, right? Yeah, probably maybe an artifact of when it was conceived and written, but I find that a lot of superheroes kind of fall more on the Superman side of things, where it's not all that interesting.
No, you're
From
definitely
like a
right. That
social commentary angle, and it is
no,
it
not
is
at
just
all.
more overt. It's just more overt, like kind of fantasy. I don't think the themes and the messaging is really all that important to it, and what's there is very conservative, let's say, in a way that I find extremely distasteful.
No, you're 100% right, and that was the genesis of the superhero was they represented the apex of law and order, because it wasn't a time where any kind of like sympathizing with people who felt wronged was a thing. That just
Yeah.
wasn't a thing in media, or that was subversive literature at the time. But shit, this was what, not 1930s when these guys were invented. So there was the whole issue with the Comics Code Authority all the way up through the 60s and stuff, where you couldn't even show somebody getting punched, like couldn't show contact between fist and face or anything like that.
It's always going past him and then blammo and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
funny.
I'll tell you one good one was this was a 50s comic out of Britain called Marvel Man, and they got sued by Marvel Comics, the U.S. company, and lost. So they had to change the name to Miracle Man, and that just languished and died. And then in the 1980s, Alan Moore picked it up, and he went back and retconned the whole squeaky clean adventures of Miracle Man as a fantasy that was installed in this guy's head, because he was a military experiment who could transform into a superhero, but he was too dangerous. And so they brainwashed him and hypnotized him into thinking that he had all these squeaky clean adventures, and then just discarded his powers because he'd done all he needed to do. But it turns out he still had the powers, and he finds out that he can use them again. And so because he is like the one superhero in the world, he finds out that he can, make anything he wants to happen. He's not quite as powerful as Superman, but he can like go into space and like swim down to the bottom of the Mariana Trench and stuff like that. And he decides to change things. He finds out that the reason he can transform is because this race of aliens built genetically and physically superior bodies for humans, but the US government didn't want them for some reason. So he goes and makes contact with these aliens, and he finds out that his transformation into his super form is actually him warping his human body to the aliens base and then having his super body warped to Earth where he is. And he decides that the whole planet would be better if they just discarded all their human bodies and got these engineered alien bodies. And he does that, and he becomes the ruler of the whole world and makes a utopian society where nobody is able to question him because he can just remove their bodies and turn them into normal humans where they can just be punched through. Yeah. So there's good shit out there that does question, what kind, because the interesting that comes with superpowers is the human responsibility to use them, right? Because there's, obviously the adage about absolute power corrupting absolutely. Superman is only an interesting character because it's not just his super strength and abilities that make him super, but it's his unwavering dedication to upholding law and knowing that
His
he
moral
could.
character.
Yeah, knowing that he could be that guy that's just like, you know what, I'm sick of this. I'm going to be the babysitter of humanity forever now, and everybody's going to have to do what I say. It's there are a handful, like once again it's Alan Moore gets into it, him questioning whether or not, like you said, what he's doing is somehow holding back humanity from any kind of like evolutionary social change, or if he should even have a hand in it. But he does kind of in a way.
It's artificially imposed. It's not organic and
Right. Right.
They're
But
not. It's not humanity building a utopia out of falling flat on their faces for generations upon generations upon generations. Gradual improvement, right? Rebuilding the
yes.
Garden of Eden. Let's just say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not through getting better that way, and it's just snap your fingers. I'm just going to impose it, and as a result, it's flawed.
Right. And I guess it's worth noting that Superman was invented by a couple of Jewish dudes, and I think that their perspective on what a Christ-like figure would be factors into that whole sort of hands-off approach that Superman has to have, while also being
Mhm.
more of like a protective force rather than a guiding or like impelling one. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not there to
It,
save us from ourselves, but he is there to save us from what would otherwise just be like catastrophic, chaotic disasters, in which are embodied by the supervillains that he fights.
hmm Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Actually, I hadn't considered it that way.
But I'm with you in that a lot of times the Superman movies particularly tend to suck. It's only those handful of comics by specific authors that actually want to delve into his psychology and the kind of actual struggles he does face, because you can't really put him up against physical challenges,
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, I think
Yeah.
that's a.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to, because I keep talking about this movie, but I'm just trying to sell it. Again,
You're good.
last note I want to say on the Batman, man. Like, okay, I think the reason why it wasn't that popular, is because the Riddler is the Guy Fawkes people, and the movie sets it up explicitly that Batman is fighting the Guy Fawkes people,
Oh, okay.
and that's if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend it. Um, Especially if you've seen the Joker, watch that one. It's cool. Bruce Wayne has to come to terms with his own like privileged background and the evils of like what his family set up, and how it created this, and how it ended up creating the Riddler. I don't really want to. I'm spoiling the whole movie. Whatever. Um, Check it out. That's all I'm gonna say. But yeah, I just don't think it was ever gonna be as popular because it doesn't have like a Joker type villain, like the Nolan movies. That Joker became popular for the same reasons.
That
This
was
one doesn't have it because this one's explicitly like against that type of response, because of getting vengeance. You know,
yeah, okay.
as a mob basically, and just like wholesale killing people.
Yeah. That was the Nolan movies had Heath Ledger as the Joker.
Heath
Am I
Ledger.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, people went goo goo for that whole performance, but I
It was
felt like
it's endearing. It's a good performance. So
I guess so. I felt like it was a little bit overwrought, but that's a kind of a dumb thing to try to pin on the Joker character.
yeah, it's
But
not the fault of the movie. It became
nah,
such a meme with like gang weed from like Facebook or whatever.
wow, that
And the
brought
whole
me back.
gamers thing. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, that's the problem. See, if you saw it before all that, it probably would have been more advantageous to you, because it was just one of those like flash in the pan type things, came out at the right time.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and if you weren't there, you probably won't have the same effect. But it was pretty significant when it came out before all the memes took over.
I definitely saw the one with Ledger. Was that Dark Knight Rises?
No, that was just the Dark Knight. Dark
The
Knight
Dark
Rises was with
Knight.
Sam or Tom Hardy. That
Okay,
had Bane, that
okay.
had Bane in it. Yeah.
That's right. That's the one that I didn't see. I didn't see the one with Bane.
Yeah, that one's it's good. It's an entertaining movie, but Nolan falls into the same bullshit that I was talking about with Superman, unfortunately. So
Yeah.
it's not very interesting. It's just a fun little spectacle, and conceptually cool characters, but his movies, or at least his Batman movies, there's not really anything terribly like deep or insightful or interesting going on with them, unfortunately. There's really not much to tie it into real life, apart from like superficially, and his movies are very superficial.
Right. Right. Cool and stylish for sure. I remember liking the Scarecrow a lot. That was a really cool representation of the Scarecrow.
Yeah, it's just like there's nothing there though, right? Like,
No.
wide as an ocean, deep as a puddle. Unfortunately,
Yeah, exactly.
the scarecrow isn't a stand-in for anyone or anything anywhere. Um, Joker isn't really a real person at all, unless you want to see yourself as again a person. Joker's not even taking revenge. He's just a psycho in that movie.
Yeah.
He doesn't even care about anything,
Right.
and then the Bane, it's vaguely Occupy Wall Street kind of bullshit, because that's about when that came out.
Oh,
But
interesting. Okay.
nothing's done with that, and it kind of takes an absurd turn, and it gets really ridiculous in the last act. Completely fucking ridiculous, ruins the whole movie. But yeah, it's infinitely watchable. It's a strong 7.
Definitely. Those are the quintessential action movies. Just like enough style that you can't really be bored, and plus cool one-liners. I remember.
I did want more. I did want more style. There's not enough like actual style. It's just like generic day shots of like fucking New York, right? With
Yeah,
set pieces. It's like
yeah.
you really want like I want to see Gotham City, man. Like give what compared to like Tim Burton's, right? Like that shit just bleeds style.
Definitely has that whole Art Deco
Yeah.
vibe, which is the thing
Yeah.
that always made me think of. Like that streamlined, kind of like society stopped advancing in aesthetic in the 1950s, but the technology kept going.
Yeah, you got this whole like gothic again, that even feels more Batman, dude. You have this gothic inspired architecture, dude, and like lions and shit. I just like honestly, like it's so cool, right? Like kind of old American type cities, but way exaggerated.
Right. Yeah. That is exactly what I think of when I think of Batman and his set and setting. So yeah, that's another reason why watching the Joker, I was just like, this is just New York or Chicago or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah. I get you. Well, anyway, that's long. This is a long ass episode. We got to call it.
All right.
If we have no more notes, last call for notes. I don't have anything else.
No, I don't have anything else without like making this like 4 hours long. So
yeah, my brain is. I'm gonna walk away, leaving brain footprints on the floor when I go to bed now. So yeah, I guess we can tell our vast audience who are just dying to contact us. If you want to, you can at nouncertaintermsprod@gmail.com. And you can always just search No Uncertain Terms Productions. Everything is on our link tree there. I've got music up under Skew Composite. You can find that stuff on our YouTube page. You can find it on Spotify. Someday I'll be able to do these plugs really smoothly. But until then, it ain't my tragedy.